Hello, my name is Alex Isles and welcome to Bamburgh, and in today's episode we're going to go to the 15th century, more specifically 1464, when Bamburgh was besieged by Yorkist forces. So the king is King Henry VI, and poor King Henry VI is a very unfortunate English monarch. He actually had a very rough life because he was probably not well suited to being king. His father, Henry V, had been a fantastic English general, English king, monarch, loved by the people, but died far too young. And when he passed away, the poor Henry VI was just a baby, and he was now flung into the forefront of English politics and also of French politics as well, because at the same time his maternal grandfather passed away, meaning that he was also the King of France. So as King of France and King of England, his two kingdoms now started seeing fractious arguments, difficulties, conflict, and he was just a baby, and he grew up with this until eventually he came to the age of majority and became king of both of his countries, eventually leading to the loss of France, and then eventually after that the War of the Roses, with the House of York seeing itself as a much more suitable royal family and a lot more popular with a great deal of people within the country than the House of Lancaster, which was his own dynasty. So because of that, he was now in a great deal of trouble, and the conflict started to boil over, and there were a number of battles until we come to the Battle of Hexham. And at the Battle of Hexham, the Lancastrian forces are defeated, and Henry VI retreats up here to Bamburgh. And when he retreats up here to Bamburgh, some historians have said that this summed up the whole of his kingdom inside the walls of the fortress. And then the Lancastrian forces came up here under Earl Warwick, who is nicknamed the Kingmaker because his influence could decide who would become monarch in Britain. So Henry VI is inside here, and he hears the Warwick is coming up, so he flees, and he leaves Bamburgh under the charge of Sir Ralph Grey, who is the knight who comes from Chillingham, and he then takes over the siege of Bamburgh. Warwick comes up here with 3 guns: Newcastle, London, and Warwick comes up here and he sets up his 3 guns. His 3 guns being Newcastle, London and Dyson. And then he starts blasting away at the walls of Bamburgh Castle, opening fire time and time again, as stones from Bamburgh Castle's walls are flung into the sea, and the population inside Bamburgh is hit over and over again by this cannon fire that's coming from the Yorkist guns. Eventually, one of the towers where Sir Ralph Grey is actually stationed within collapses because of cannon fire, and Sir Ralph Grey is thought dead and the castle is taken, but poor Ralph Grey is actually captured and later taken down to York, where he is executed for treason. And when he's executed, he receives a hellish sentence, and they do quite horrendous things to his body after he is killed. And so because of that, you also see again the end of the Lancastrian power after Bamburgh is taken. Margaret of Anjou, who is the queen, flees across to France, and Henry VI flees into Scotland and then is eventually captured, brought back down to London, and stays in the Tower of London. Slightly later, in 1470 though, Edward VI falls out with his lords, and because of that, Henry VI is restored for just 1 year as King of England, before eventually he's deposed again and then is murdered in the Tower of London. And interestingly enough, is actually declared a saint because of the fact that he supported educational facilities, religious facilities, and saw quite a lot of investment into those areas. It's quite sad because Henry VI seems to have been a character who was not suited to a time of war. He was a much more gentle king, and unfortunately his mental health was really affected by warfare. He was actually found laughing and singing in the middle of a battle once, and it really showed how the strain of being a monarch just really affected him. And if he had maybe been a king in peacetime, he would be seen maybe more like Edward the Confessor, the Anglo-Saxon king who established monasteries, schools and religious facilities around the whole of the country, and generally saw an increase and a benefit to the English people. But unfortunately, poor Henry VI was born into a time of war, and is seen in regards maybe compared to his father, Henry V, a lot, this great war leader and brilliant political mind. And so it's quite a sad thing that we see here, that this poor monarch was placed in this position where he was under such incredible pressure, and his mental and physical health suffered because of it. But that was basically the last time that Bamburgh was one of the great fortresses in warfare, because of the Earl of Warwick's guns that blew Bamburgh to pieces and left it as a ruin. So you can see how Bamburgh was turned into a ruin by Yorkist guns, and remained a ruin until the Bishop of Durham, Lord Crewe, took over it from the Foster family, and then proceeded to restore it, where it became a school for girls. And then later on, in the very late 19th century, how Lord Armstrong took it over and restored it into the stately home that you can see today when you visit Bamburgh. So this is the last time in history when Bamburgh is seen as a true military site and not a ruin, and then later on a stately home. I really hope you've enjoyed the video today and you've learned something about how this poor character Henry VI was imprisoned within the walls of Bamburgh, and how this place became the entirety of his kingdom at a very desperate time in English history. So I really hope you've enjoyed the video today, that you will like the video, maybe write a comment below asking some questions about this period of English history, and alongside that as well, share it with your friends. And if you aren't subscribed, I would ask you to subscribe so that you could see more of these videos in the future. As always, thank you for joining us today, and I hope you join me for another video in the near future. Until then, stay safe and well, and thank you very much.